They told me to go inside the gas station and buy cherry soda for my cousin. That was how small the moment looked at first. Just a plastic bottle of soda, a paper bag of chips, a joke I thought I was supposed to laugh at. I was 16 years old, standing under the flickering lights of a day. Highway gas station 30 miles outside Cedar Falls, Missouri. Holding $12 my mother had pressed into my palm like she was doing me a favor. Go on, Lena, Uncle Mike called from the passenger seat of the van. Let's see if you can do one simple thing without getting lost. Everyone laughed. My mother laughed too. My cousin Ava, sitting in the back seat with her sunglasses pushed on, top of her head, held up her phone to record me. Don't take forever, she said. We're not waiting all day. I should have heard the warning in that sentence. But when you grow up in a family that humiliates you in small doses, you learn to swallow the first warning and call it normal. So I walked into the gas station. I remember everything about that place. The bell over the door, the smell of old coffee and burnt hot dogs, the cashier, a thin man with gray hair and a name tag that said Ray, barely looking up from his crossword puzzle. I bought 2 cherry sodas, barbecue chips for my uncle, gum for my mother, and 1 small bottle of water for myself because nobody had asked if I was thirsty. When I stepped back outside, the parking space beside pump 4 was empty. At first, I smiled. I stood there with the plastic bag cutting into my fingers and looked around the parking lot. The van wasn't by the air pump. It wasn't behind the diesel lane. It wasn't parked near the bathrooms. I heard a truck engine on the highway and turned too quickly, thinking they were circling back. But it wasn't them. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The cherry sodas started sweating inside the bag. I called my mother 5 times from my cell phone before the battery died. Straight to voicemail. I called Uncle Mike. No answer. I called Ava. She sent me to voicemail after 2 rings. That was when the first real fear entered my body. Not panic yet. Just a thin, cold line running down my spine. I went back inside and asked Ray if I could use the landline. He looked at my face, then at the plastic bag in my hand, and pushed the phone toward me without a word. I called my mother again. This time, I left a message. Mom, it's me. I'm still at the gas station. I think you forgot me. Please come back. I hated how small my voice sounded. I hated that even then, I said please. By sunset, Ray had given me a paper cup of water and a chair near the counter. By midnight, he had locked the front door and told me I could sleep in the storage room if I stayed quiet. By morning, my family still had not come back. Years later, my mother would say it was only supposed to be a joke. Uncle Mike would say I was always dramatic. Ava would say she thought someone else had checked the back seat. But the security camera above pump 4 recorded the truth. It recorded my mother looking back once before the van pulled away. It recorded Uncle Mike laughing. It recorded me standing there with a bag of soda and chips while the only family I had in the world drove onto the highway and disappeared. 16 years later, I returned to Cedar Falls as Judge Lena Harper. Not to sentence them. The law would never allow me to preside over a case where I was the victim. But I returned with a black robe, a sealed evidence box, an old gas station logbook, and the kind of truth my family had spent more than a decade calling a misunderstanding. Before I tell you how that room went silent when my mother heard my name announced, welcome back to Blue Drama Stories. If you've ever been hurt by people who later called it just a joke, comment one word that describes that feeling. And make sure you subscribe, because this story is not about revenge. It is about the day a girl they abandoned became the woman they could no longer dismiss. Now, to understand why my family thought leaving me at a gas station was something they could laugh about, I need to take you back to the house, where I learned that being forgotten was not an accident. It was a pattern. I grew up in a yellow house at the end of Briar Lane, the kind of house that looked warm from the outside. White porch railing, flower boxes under the windows, a maple tree in the front yard where my mother hung little glass wind chimes every spring. People in town used to tell me I was lucky. You have such a close family, Lena. I learned early that some houses only look safe from the sidewalk. Inside that house, I was the child everyone practiced disappointment on. My mother, Karen Walters, worked at the county clerk's office. She knew how to smile at strangers, remember birthdays for people she barely liked, and bring casseroles to grieving neighbors until everyone called her generous. At home, she measured love by convenience. My older cousin Ava lived with us most weekends because Uncle Mike was divorced, loud, and always between jobs. Ava was only 8 months, older than me, but in our family, she was treated like she had been born on a stage. Ava was pretty in the way adults immediately rewarded: blonde hair, bright smile, straight A's. The kind of girl who could spill juice on the carpet and somehow make my mother laugh. I was different, quiet, careful, always watching the room before I decided whether it was safe to speak. When Ava forgot homework, my mother said she was overwhelmed. When I forgot anything, she said, "Lena, why do you always make simple things hard?" When Ava talked back, Uncle Mike called her spirited. When I defended myself, he said, "There she goes again, acting like the victim." That phrase followed me through childhood like a shadow. Acting like the victim. If Ava hid my shoes before school and I cried, I was acting like the victim. If Uncle Mike locked me out on the porch for 10 minutes because I needed fresh air, and I told my mother, I was acting like the victim. If I asked why everyone laughed when he called me Lost Lena, my mother said, "Then stop giving people reasons to tease you." The nickname started when I was 9. We were at a county fair, and I wandered 2 aisles away from the funnel cake stand to look at a booth selling painted wooden birds. I was gone for maybe 4 minutes. My mother found me before I even realized I was lost. But Uncle Mike told the story for years. "Remember when Lena got lost at the fair? Couldn't find her way out of a paper bag, that one." Everyone laughed. Every birthday, every barbecue, every holiday. By the time I was 16, the joke had hardened into an identity. Ava was the smart one. Ava was the pretty one. Ava was the one who would get out of Cedar Falls and become someone. I was Lost Lena, the dramatic one, the sensitive one, the one who could be blamed if a room needed someone to blame. My father had left when I was 6. Not dramatically, not with a fight I could remember. He simply stopped coming home, then stopped calling, then became a name my mother refused to say unless she was angry. "You're just like him," she would tell me whenever I disappointed her. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew it was supposed to hurt. The summer I turned 16, my mother decided we needed a family trip to Lake Hollow. 3 days at a campground, 1 rented cabin, 1 blue passenger van Uncle Mike borrowed from a friend. Ava was excited. Uncle Mike packed a cooler of beer. My mother bought matching red t-shirts that said Walter's Family Summer Weekend. Mine was a size too big. Ava's fit perfectly. The morning we left, I stood on the porch holding my backpack and asked my mother if I could bring my sketchbook. She looked at me like I had asked to bring a piano. "Lena, we're going camping. Don't make yourself weird." So I left it on my bed. That detail stayed with me for years. Not because the sketchbook mattered, but because it was the last thing in that house that still belonged to the girl I was before the gas station. The drive started badly. Ava got the front passenger seat because she got carsick, even though she spent the first hour filming herself and laughing at Uncle Mike's stories. I sat in the back row beside duffel bags, a cooler that leaked, melted ice onto my sneakers, and a box of paper plates that kept sliding into my knee whenever the van turned. At first, I tried to join the conversation. Then Uncle Mike looked at me in the rearview mirror and grinned. "Careful, everyone. If Lena talks too much, we might miss our exit and end up in Canada." Ava laughed so hard she almost dropped her phone. My mother didn't tell him to stop. She only said, "Mike, don't start." But she was smiling. That was the thing about my family. They never had to say they hated me. They only had to laugh when someone else made me feel small. And by the time we pulled into that gas station outside Cedar Falls, I had spent 16 years learning not to expect anyone to come back for me. I just hadn't realized they were finally going to prove it. The first night at Ray's gas station taught me something I had never learned in my mother's house. Fear does not always scream. Sometimes it sits quietly beside a counter that smells like cigarettes and old coffee, watching headlights pass on the highway, counting every car that is not coming back for you. Ray closed the store at midnight. He was not cruel. He was not warm either. He had seen too many stranded people to believe every story, but not enough cruelty in him to send a barefoot teenage girl back outside. "You can sleep in the stockroom," he said, "but I open at 6. You understand?" I nodded. The room was barely larger than a closet. There was no bed, only cardboard on the floor and a blanket. I lay down with my knees pulled to my chest. I did not cry. Instead, I kept replaying the parking lot in my mind. My mother looking back, Uncle Mike laughing, Ava filming, the van turning toward the highway. By morning, I had convinced myself they would come back embarrassed, pretending the joke had gone too far. At 6:14, I called my mother from Ray's landline. No answer. At 7:02, I called Uncle Mike. No answer. At 7:18, I called Ava. This time, she picked up. For 1 second, I heard music in the background. Then her voice, annoyed and sleepy. Lena? Ava, I said. I'm still at the gas station. There was silence, then a small laugh. Oh my God, you're still doing this? What do you mean? Mom said you probably called some friend to pick you up. Uncle Mike said you were trying to ruin the trip. I'm alone. You're always dramatic. Ava, please, tell my mom to come get me, she said. I'm not getting involved. Then the line went dead. I stood there holding the receiver until Ray took it from my hand. For 2 more days, I stayed near that gas station. Ray gave me water, leftover sandwiches, and a warning every few hours that he could not keep a runaway there forever. I swept the floor and stacked soda bottles in the cooler because doing something with my hands kept my mind from breaking. On the 3rd afternoon, a county deputy stopped for gas. I saw him through the window before he saw me. Tan uniform, badge, hand resting casually on his belt. Ray glanced at me, then at him. You got people looking for you? He asked quietly. I thought of my mother telling everyone I was dramatic. I thought of Uncle Mike saying I had ruined the trip. I thought of Ava hanging up, and I understood something that made my body go cold. If the police called my family, they would not tell the truth. They would say I ran off. They would say I had always been unstable. They would say this was another one of Lena's episodes. Because they were adults with clean clothes, a house on Briar Lane, and voices that sounded reasonable. People would believe them before they believed me. So I waited until the deputy went into the bathroom. Then I slipped out the side door. I took a bottle of water, 2 granola bars Ray had left by the register, and the $12 my mother had given me for soda. I walked behind the station, across dry grass, and down toward the service road. Ray saw me from the window. He did not stop me. For years, I hated him for that. Later, I understood. Not everyone who sees a child in danger knows how to become brave. By sunset, the gas station sign was gone behind me. So was Lena Walters, the version of her who still believed someone might come back. That girl stayed beside Pump 4. The one walking toward the city was someone else entirely. The city did not welcome me. It swallowed me. By the time I reached the outskirts of Kansas City, my feet were blistered inside my cheap sneakers. My hair smelled like dust and fryer, grease, and the $12 from my mother had become 1 bus ticket, a bottle of water, and nothing else. I slept the first night behind a laundromat. The dryers ran until 2 in the morning, and warm air leaked through a vent near the back wall. I curled up under it with my arms inside my t-shirt, listening to coins drop into machines and strangers laugh on the other side of the brick. No one knew my name. For the first time, that felt safer than being known. The next morning, a woman found me digging through a grocery store trash bin for bruised apples. She was carrying 2 bags of day-old bread and wearing a faded blue coat, even though the air was already hot. You hungry? She asked. I stepped back. She didn't move closer. My name is Clara. I run the shelter kitchen 3 blocks over. You can eat there. No one will make you talk. That last sentence was why I followed her. The shelter kitchen smelled like rice, onions, bleach, and coffee. Clara gave me a paper plate piled with beans and cornbread. I ate slowly, because I was afraid if I looked too hungry, she would ask questions I could not answer. But Clara was patient. Over the next week, she let me sweep floors, wash pots, and sleep on a cot behind the pantry. Her husband, Thomas, found me donated shoes. Half, a size too big, but without holes. They were the first thing anyone had given me without making me feel like I owed them my soul. I told Clara my name was Leah, not Lena. Leah. The name came out before I planned it, and once I said it, I kept it. Leah did not have a mother on Briar Lane. Leah did not have an uncle who laughed while a van pulled away. Leah did not have a cousin who recorded humiliation like entertainment. Leah was just a girl who needed work, food, and a place no one could drag her from. But safety has a sound when it starts to crack. It sounds like a social worker's clipboard. One afternoon, while I was wiping tables, Clara touched my shoulder and whispered, "Go to the back room." Through the thin wall, I heard a woman ask, "How old is she?" Clara answered too slowly. "She says 18. Does she have ID? Silence. If she's a minor, we have to report it. Runaways are still someone's child. Someone's child. The words made my stomach twist, because I knew exactly what would happen if they called Karen Walters. My mother would cry into the phone. Uncle Mike would sound reasonable. Ava would say I had always exaggerated. And I would be returned to the people who had already learned they could abandon me and still be believed. So I ran again. I took only the donated shoes, a blanket, and half a loaf of bread, wrapped in a napkin. Clara saw me leave through the alley door. She did not chase me. She only called out softly, "Leah, be careful." It was the first blessing I ever received from someone who knew I was lying and chose kindness anyway. For the next 16 years, I lived like someone who understood that being found was not always the same as being saved. I worked under tables, behind counters, and after closing time, I washed dishes in a diner where the cook paid me in cash and pretended not to notice I slept in the break room during snowstorms. I cleaned motel rooms off the interstate, folded towels until my fingers cracked, and learned which managers asked for ID and which ones only cared that the bathroom mirrors shined. At 17, I bought myself a chocolate cupcake from a bakery that threw away the unsold ones at night. I sat on the roof with one candle and no song. I did not make a wish. Wishes felt like things children made when they still believed someone was listening. At 19, I took the GED under the name Lena Harper. I had studied from library computers and free videos, usually with headphones so old one side barely worked. When the results came back, I had passed every section. I printed the certificate, folded it carefully, and put it inside a plastic sleeve. It was the first official paper in my life that did not belong to the Walters family. At 21, I met Judge Evelyn Price. She came into the diner after a late juvenile court hearing, wearing a navy suit and carrying case files tied with red string. I was refilling her coffee when one folder slid open and a photograph of a boy about 12 fell onto the table. I looked away immediately. She noticed. "You don't like court files?" she asked. "I don't like children being turned into paperwork." She studied me for a long moment. Most people looked at my uniform and saw a waitress. Judge Price saw a sentence I had not meant to reveal. A week later, she came back and left a business card with her tip. On the back, she had written, "If you ever want to learn how the system works, call me." I almost threw it away. Instead, I kept it behind my GED certificate. That card became the first door. Judge Price helped me enroll in community college. She found a legal aid internship where no one asked too many questions at first. When I finally told her I had been using a name that was not mine, she did not panic. She only said, "Then we do this correctly." It took months. Background checks, old records, a sealed petition, a legal name change from Lena Marie Walters to Lena Harper. I chose Harper because it sounded like someone who could hold on. College became law school. Law school became the public defender's office. The public defender's office became juvenile court. I stood beside children whose mothers called them difficult, whose fathers called them liars, whose relatives called cruelty discipline. Every time I heard, "It was just a joke," something in me went and still. By 30, I had prosecuted neglect cases, defended teenagers no one wanted to understand, and sat through more family lies than I could count. By 31, I was appointed to the juvenile court bench in Kansas City. Judge Lena Harper. The first time I put on the black robe, I thought it would feel like power. It did not. It felt like weight, a reminder that the law was not a weapon for my anger. It was a place where someone finally had to say what happened and make the room listen. Then, on a rainy Thursday afternoon, 16 years after Pump 4, a letter arrived at my chambers. Inside was a note from an attorney handling Ray's estate. Ray had died, and in his storage room, behind boxes of old receipt paper and gas station uniforms, they had found a sealed evidence box with my name on it. Lena Walters. Not Leah, not Judge Harper. Lena, the girl everyone had decided was gone. And inside that box was the first proof that I had never abandoned my family. They had abandoned me. The attorney's name was Miriam Cole. She met me in a conference room 2 floors below my chambers because I did not want that box carried through the courthouse where everyone knew me as Judge Harper. On the table sat a dented metal cash box, blue paint chipped at the corners, a strip of masking tape across the lid. Written in faded black marker were 2 words, For Lena. Miriam slid a folder toward me. Raymond Alvarez owned the gas station on Route 18 for 41 years, she said. In his will, he instructed that this box be delivered to you, if you were ever located. If I were located, I repeated. She nodded. He also left a sworn statement. He said a teenage girl named Lena Walters was abandoned at his station 16 years ago. He wrote that he should have called law enforcement immediately, but he was afraid you would be sent back to the people who left you. The words landed harder than I expected. For years, I had told myself Ray did nothing. Maybe silence had haunted him too. Inside the box was a spiral notebook, a stack of receipts, a small flash drive, and an old microcassette labeled Pump 4. Miriam opened the notebook first. Ray's handwriting was uneven but clear. August 9th. Girl left at station. Says family drove off. Name Lena Walters. Barefoot. Dehydrated. Called mother twice. No answer. Called uncle. No answer. Called cousin. Cousin answered. Girl cried after call. I touched the page with one finger, not because I needed proof, because part of me still needed permission to believe my own memory. The flash drive contained security footage. Grainy. Time-stamped. Silent. The Walters van pulled away from Pump 4 at 3:42 p.m. My mother looked back through the side window. Uncle Mike threw his head back laughing. Ava leaned over the rear seat with her phone raised. Then the van turned onto the highway. At 3:47, 16-year-old me stepped out of the gas station holding a plastic bag and stopped walking. I watched that girl stand there. I watched her wait. Judges learned to keep their faces still, but my hands were shaking under the table. There's more, Miriam said. She pressed play on the microcassette. My own voice filled the conference room, thin and frightened. Mom, it's me. I'm still at the gas station. I think you forgot me. Please come back. Then the click of the receiver. Silence. Miriam stopped the tape. Ray had a small recorder connected to the counterphone after a robbery years earlier. It captured your outgoing call. The next morning, he also wrote down that your mother called the station asking whether you were still there. I looked up. What? She asked if you were still there. Ray told her you had left. According to his statement, your mother said. Then she made her choice. The room seemed to tilt. My mother had known. Not years later, not after a missing flyer. The next day, 3 weeks after that meeting, Detective James Mercer contacted Miriam Cole, who then contacted me through proper channels. He had been assigned to the original missing person report and had never believed the family's story. They said you wandered off during a family stop, he told me. They said you had emotional problems. There was no footage then, no witness. Willing to go on record. I'm sorry, I said. Then I want to make a formal statement and request that the file be reopened. He paused. Judge, if we do this, your family will know you're alive. I looked at the box, the notebook, the tape, the girl on the screen who had waited until the sun went down. Good, I said. But they don't get to hear it from me first. If you have ever had to keep proof because someone kept trying to rewrite what they did to you, comment, I remember. Because sometimes healing begins the moment the truth finally has a timestamp, and mine had been waiting in a metal box for 16 years. The file reopened quietly. No press release. No dramatic knock on my mother's door. Just Detective Mercer making calls, pulling old reports, requesting Ray's footage, and comparing 16-year-old statements against the evidence in that metal box. For the first time, my family was not the only source of the story. That changed everything. Karen Walters gave her new statement from the same yellow house on Briar Lane. She was always difficult, my mother said. Sensitive, impulsive. That day, she got angry because we teased her a little. We thought she had called someone to pick her up. Detective Mercer asked, Then why did you file a missing person report? 3 weeks later, my mother paused. Because rehearsed lies hate simple questions. Uncle Mike was worse. He laughed at first. 16 years ago? You're seriously digging that up? Kids run off. She wanted attention. Then Harper showed him one still image from the footage. Me standing alone beside Pump 4. The van already gone. Uncle Mike stopped laughing. Ava, now in her early 30s and married to a man who sold insurance in Springfield, cried through most of her interview. She admitted she had filmed me going into the station. She admitted Uncle Mike told everyone to teach Lena a lesson. She said she thought they were only driving around the block. When Harper asked why no one went back, Ava said, "Because Aunt Karen said not to reward her drama." That sentence did not surprise me. It only confirmed the shape of the wound. Within 2 weeks, whispers started moving through Cedar Falls. The Walters family had not lost Lena. They had left her. My mother tried to control the damage before it reached anyone. Important. She posted an old photo of me on Facebook, one from 4th grade, where my bangs were crooked and I was missing a front tooth. "My sweet Lena," she wrote, "we have prayed for answers for 16 years. Some wounds never close." I read it from my office after a clerk sent me the screenshot. For a moment, my hand hovered over the keyboard. I wanted to write. "You knew where I was the next day. You asked Ray if I was still there. You let me become a missing child because it was easier than admitting what you did." Instead, I closed the laptop. The truth was already moving without me. 3 days later, the Cedar Falls Youth Justice Foundation announced its annual fundraiser. I had been invited months earlier as keynote speaker. Because of my work with abandoned minors, the theme that year was simple: no child left behind. I almost declined. Not because I was afraid, because the irony felt too sharp to touch. Then Detective Mercer called. "Your family bought a table," he said. "Why?" "Because the mayor is attending. So is the county prosecutor. Karen doesn't want to look guilty by staying home." Of course, image had always mattered more to my mother than truth. That night, I took the evidence box from my closet and placed it on my kitchen table. Ray's notebook, the flash drive, the voicemail tape, the torn copy of the missing flyer my mother had once mailed to every Cruz church in town. I did not plan a revenge speech. I planned a record. There is a difference. Revenge wants people to hurt. A record wants people to stop lying. So I called Miriam Cole, Detective Mercer, and Judge Price, the woman, who had once seen a waitress and recognized a future. Then I accepted the invitation. 16 years after they left me at Pump 4, my family would sit in the front row believing they were there to protect their reputation. They had no idea whose name was about to be announced from the stage. They had no idea the judge they came to impress was the girl they had abandoned. And this time, I was not the one waiting to be found. The fundraiser was held in the Cedar Falls Civic Center, the same building where my mother used to drag me to holiday craft fairs when I was little. Back then, I followed her from booth to booth carrying shopping bags, while Ava tried on bracelets and Uncle Mike joked with vendors. That night, 16 years later, the lobby smelled like polished floors, coffee, and expensive perfume. There were white tablecloths, gold programs, a string quartet near the stage, and a banner over the entrance that read, "No Child Left Behind." I arrived through the back entrance with Miriam Cole, Detective Mercer, and Judge Price. My robe was folded over my arm, still inside the garment bag. "Are you sure?" Judge Price asked. She had asked me that 3 times in 2 days. I understood why. A judge's power is dangerous if it becomes personal. A courtroom cannot be used as a place to bleed on other people. But this was not a courtroom. This was a public foundation event. I had already recused myself from anything connected to the reopened file. No sentence would be handed down from that stage. No criminal ruling. No order. Only a record. "I'm sure," I said. Detective Mercer held the evidence box in both hands. "We'll keep it factual," he said. "No accusations beyond the file. No theatrics." I almost smiled. My family brought enough theatrics for all of us. Through the curtain, I saw them. My mother sat at table 3, close enough to be seen by the mayor but not important enough for table 1. She wore a navy dress and pearl earrings. Her hair sprayed into the shape she used for church photos. Uncle Mike sat beside her, heavier than I remembered, one hand wrapped around a glass of water he clearly wished was whiskey. Ava sat 2 chairs away. She kept checking her phone, then glancing toward the stage. None of them recognized me from the side. Why would they? The last time they saw Lena Walters, she was 16, thin, sunburned, holding a plastic bag at a gas station. The woman behind the curtain was 32, wearing a black suit, her hair pinned low, her name printed in gold letters on the program. Judge Lena Harper. Not Walters, Harper. The host stepped to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us tonight for the Cedar Falls Youth Justice Foundation's annual fundraiser." Polite applause moved through the room. He spoke about foster youth, shelter funding, neglected children, emergency placement services. My mother looked concerned at all the right times. She had always been good at public compassion. Then the host lowered his notes. Our keynote speaker tonight has spent her career advocating for children who were abandoned, dismissed, or disbelieved by the adults responsible for protecting them. She began her life in this county under circumstances that, until recently, were not fully understood. My mother's head lifted. Uncle Mike stopped moving his glass. Ava's phone lowered slowly to the table. The host continued. She now serves on the juvenile court bench in Kansas City, where her work has changed the way courts listen to children who are too often called difficult when they are actually in danger. Please welcome Judge Lena Harper. I stepped out before the applause started. For half a second, the room did not understand. Then the audience stood. 400 people clapped. But table 3 did not move. My mother's face emptied first, not paled. Emptied, as if every story she had told herself for 16 years had been pulled out at once. Uncle Mike leaned forward, squinting. Ava covered her mouth with one hand. I walked to the podium. I did not look away from them. The girl at Pump 4 had spent too many years being the only one forced to look at the truth. Now they would look too. Good evening, I said. My voice sounded calm through the speakers. My name is Judge Lena Harper, but I was born in this county as Lena Walters. A low murmur passed through the room. My mother closed her eyes. I was 16 years old when I was left at a gas station off Route 18, during what my family later described as a misunderstanding. For 16 years, the public version was that I wandered away, that I was unstable, that no one knew where I had gone. I paused. Detective Mercer stood near the side wall, the evidence box beside him. Tonight is not a trial. I will not be ruling on my own past. I will not ask this room to punish anyone for me. I looked at my mother. But I will say what happened plainly, because every abandoned child deserves at least one room where the truth is not softened to protect the adults. The screens behind me lit up, not with my face, with a grainy still image from Pump 4, a blue van pulling away, a teenage girl standing outside the gas station door, holding a plastic bag. The room went silent so completely I could hear my own breath in the microphone. And at table 3, Uncle Mike finally stopped pretending he did not remember. The first sound after the photograph appeared was not crying. It was a chair scraping backward. Uncle Mike stood halfway, then realized 400 people could see to him. He sat down again. My mother did not move. On the screen, the security footage began to play without sound. The van at Pump 4, Ava's face in the rear window, Uncle Mike laughing in the passenger seat, my mother turning her head once. Then the van pulling onto Route 18. 5 minutes later, 16-year-old me came out of the gas station. I stopped, waited, looked left, looked right. The plastic bag hung from my hand. I let the footage run until the timestamp reached sunset. Then I said, "This is the part my family called a joke." Uncle Mike found his voice first. "Lena," he said, forcing a laugh that sounded sick in the microphone. Silence. "Come on. You know we never meant for it to go that far." I looked at him. "You left a 16-year-old girl 30 miles from home with a dying phone, no transportation, and no adult willing to come back. It was a prank." Detective Mercer stepped forward and placed Ray's notebook under the document camera. Ray's handwriting appeared on the screen behind me. "Girl left at station. Called mother. No answer. Called uncle. No answer. Cousin answered. Girl cried after call." Ava started crying quietly. My mother stood. "This is not fair," she said. "You disappeared. You let us suffer for 16 years. That sentence almost reached the place in me where the old Lena still wanted a mother. Almost. Miriam Cole pressed play on the cassette. My 16-year-old voice filled the hall. "Mom, it's me. I'm still at the gas station. I think you forgot me. Please come back." Several people turned toward my mother. She shook her head. "I never heard that." Miriam placed the transcript of Ray's sworn statement on the screen. The next morning, Karen Walters called the station, asking whether Lena was still there. When informed Lena had left, Karen Walters stated, then she made her choice. My mother stepped back. "That man was lying." "He is dead," I said. "He has nothing to gain from lying." Ava stood then. Her face was wet, her voice shaking. "I remember," she said. My mother turned sharply. "Ava, sit down." But Ava did not sit. "I remember Uncle Mike saying we should teach Lena a lesson. I remember Aunt Karen saying not to reward her drama. I remember sending her call to voicemail because everyone told me she was trying to ruin the trip." Uncle Mike slammed his palm on the table. "You were a kid. You don't know what you remember. Ava looked at him. I was old enough to know we never went back. That was the moment the room changed. Because someone from inside the family finally stopped protecting the Lee. I removed my hands from the podium. You called it a joke because that made it easier to live with. But I was 16, alone, begging you to come back. That was not a joke. That was abandonment. My mother cried then. Lena, please, she said. I'm your mother. I looked at her for a long time. No, I said. You are the woman who looked back before the van pulled away. The silence after that was heavier than applause. I turned to the audience. This foundation exists because too many children are asked to survive. What adults later rename? Discipline, misunderstanding, family business, a joke. Tonight, I am asking you to help us fund emergency legal, advocates for children who are still waiting for someone to believe them. Then I stepped away from the podium. My mother tried to follow. Evan, the foundation's security director, moved gently into her path. No direct contact unless Judge Harper invites it. Karen Walters looked stunned. She's my daughter. I heard the words, but for the first time in my life, they did not open a door. I looked back once. You left me once because you thought I had no power. Today I'm not here to punish you. I'm here to make sure you never get to call it a joke again. Then I walked off stage. Behind me, the room remained silent, and my family finally had to sit in it. The next morning, Cedar Falls woke up to the truth, not the whole truth, because no headline can hold 16 years of hunger, fear, and names I had to bury to stay alive. But enough. Local stations ran the image from Pump 4, the blue van, the girl standing alone, the mother looking back. The county prosecutor did not promise dramatic charges. Too much time had passed, and the law has limits even when memory does not. But the original missing person file was amended. The public record no longer said I wandered off during a family trip. It said I had been abandoned. That mattered more than people think. For 16 years, my family had lived inside the softer version. Lena got emotional. Lena ran away. Lena disappeared. Now the record said something else. Karen Walters stopped attending church for a while. Not because anyone shouted at her. They did not need to. People in small towns know how to punish without raising their voices. They stopped asking her to lead donation drives. They stopped calling her strong. They started crossing the grocery aisle before she could pretend nothing had changed. Uncle Mike lost his volunteer position coaching the county softball team. After 3 parents sent the footage to the league board, Ava wrote me a letter, not a text, not an apology wrapped in excuses, a real letter. She wrote that she had been a coward, that she remembered more than she had admitted for years, that hearing my voice on that tape had made her understand the difference between a prank and cruelty. At the end, she wrote, I don't expect access to your life. I only wanted to stop protecting the lie. I read the letter twice, then I put it in the evidence box with Ray's notebook. Not because I forgave her, because truth belongs with truth. 3 months later, the Cedar Falls Youth Justice Foundation opened the Ray Alvarez Emergency Fund, named after the man who had failed me once, then spent the rest of his life preserving the proof that could finally protect my memory. That was complicated. Healing usually is. I also found Clara. It took Miriam 2 weeks. Clara was retired by then, living in a small house with tomato plants along the fence. When I knocked on her door, she stared at me for several seconds before covering her mouth with both hands. Leah, she whispered. I said, Lena now. She cried first. Then I did. She apologized for not stopping me from running all those years ago. I told her she had fed me when no one else did. Sometimes that is the first kind of rescue. That winter, I went back to the gas station on Route 18. It was closed now. The pumps were wrapped in yellow tape, the windows dusty, the sign half broken. I stood beside Pump 4 for a long time. No cameras, no audience, no one to impress. Just me, the empty pavement, and the girl I had left there because surviving required it. I wanted to tell her she became a judge. I wanted to tell her she was believed. But what I said out loud was simpler. You can come home now. And for the first time, that word did not mean Briar Lane. It meant my own life. If this story stayed with you, subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment telling me your story. And if someone ever hurts you, then smiles and says it was only a joke, remember this. Pain does not become harmless because the person who caused it laughs. A joke ends when everyone is safe. Anything else is just cruelty asking for a softer name. And if you want more stories like this, check the description. There's another one waiting for you right there. I'll see you in the next one.